The war had begun at dawn. The sky above the alien kingdom was a swirling mix of purple and silver clouds, streaked with flashes of energy as ships darted through the air. On the ground, the sounds of battle were deafening. Explosions shook the terrain and the cries of soldiers filled the air. The alien king stood high above in his observation tower, watching every move with a heavy heart. He had ruled for decades and he had seen battles come and go, but this one felt different. This one was personal. His daughter, the princess, was not just his child. She was a fierce warrior, trained from a young age to defend their people. She was skilled, brave, and wise beyond her years. The king had watched her grow from a curious, determined child into a warrior capable of leading troops into battle. And now she was in the thick of it. The princess moved through the chaos like a storm. Her armor gleamed under the strange light of their home planet, and her movements were precise and powerful. She led a squad of elite warriors, cutting through enemy lines, shielding those who were weaker, and inspiring those who fought alongside her. Every action she took was calculated, every decision critical, but the enemy was relentless. They were not like the kingdom's usual rivals. They moved with a strange, unpredictable intelligence, striking where they were least expected. The princess's squad fought valiantly, but the battle was turning against them. The king's heart tightened when a scout ran into the tower, breathless and covered in dust. "Your Highness," the scout said, voice trembling, "we've lost contact with the princess." She was with the forward squad. "We haven't heard from them for hours." The king felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He wanted to believe it was a temporary loss of communication, a delay caused by the chaos of battle. But deep down he knew it was more than that. His daughter was out there somewhere, alone, facing the enemy. And the thought made his chest ache. He called for more scouts to be sent immediately, but the battlefield was vast, stretching over mountains, rivers of molten rock, and forests that seemed to stretch endlessly. Finding one person in such a massive conflict was nearly impossible. Every passing minute felt like an eternity, and the king could barely focus on the reports coming in from other parts of the front. His advisors tried to console him, speaking of probability and strategy, but their words felt hollow. Back on the battlefield, the princess fought on. She had sensed the enemy's ambush before it fully formed. Using her instincts and training, she guided her squad through hidden paths, avoiding traps that could have ended them all. Still, the battle took its toll. Friends fell beside her, some injured, some lost forever. She had no time to grieve. There was no time for anything but survival and leadership. As night began to fall, a thick fog rolled across the land, masking the remnants of the battlefield. The princess realized they were surrounded. The enemy had anticipated their movements and closed in from all sides. She knew that staying meant certain death for herself and her squad. Without hesitation, she gave the command to retreat, leading them through the fog with careful precision. But in the confusion, something unexpected happened. A sudden explosion split the ground near her, throwing her off balance. The squad was separated in the chaos. The princess fell into a narrow ravine, hidden by the shadows and the thick mist. She was alone, and for the first time in her life, fear gripped her. She had trained for years to face enemies, but the unknown, the uncertainty of survival, felt heavier than any sword or shield. When the king received the next report, his worst fears seemed confirmed. "Your Highness," another scout spoke hesitantly, We believe the princess has been captured. The enemy forces found her location, and she may not have survived the explosion." The king's world seemed to shatter. He sank into his chair, hands gripping the edge so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The thought of losing his daughter, of never seeing her again, was unbearable. Memories of her as a child flashed through his mind, her laughter echoing in the halls of the palace, her determination when learning new skills, the quiet moments when she confided in him about her fears. The war had taken her from him, and now the future felt unbearably empty. The palace fell silent as the court tried to process the news. Advisors whispered among themselves, unsure how to console a grieving king. Soldiers returned, faces pale and haunted by what they had witnessed. The princess had been a symbol of hope, and now, without her, fear began to spread like a shadow over the kingdom. The king, however, refused to accept defeat entirely. Even in his grief, a part of him clung to hope. He knew his daughter was strong, resourceful, and clever. She had faced impossible odds before, and maybe, just maybe, she had found a way to survive. He could not sit idle. He ordered a massive search across the battlefield and beyond, sending the fastest ships to scout distant planets. The mission was dangerous, but he would not rest until he knew the truth. Meanwhile, the princess struggled to regain her bearings. The explosion had left her shaken and injured, but she was alive. She moved cautiously, using the shadows and terrain to avoid enemy patrols. Every step was calculated. Every sound made her heart race. She knew that being caught again could mean the end, but she was not ready to give up. She could not. Her kingdom depended on her, and she had a duty to herself, her family, and her people. She found temporary refuge in a hidden cave, tending to her injuries as best she could. The silence was both comforting and terrifying. The distant sounds of battle echoed faintly, reminding her that danger was never far away. Yet amidst the fear and exhaustion, a spark of determination burned within her. She would survive. She would return. Days passed. The princess moved cautiously, scavenging for food and water while avoiding any signs of the enemy. She reflected on the lessons her father had taught her, remembering strategies, survival skills, and the importance of patience. She knew that rushing would be fatal. Every decision had to be deliberate, every movement intentional. Far across the kingdom, the king refused to stop searching. He would not allow despair to take hold completely. His daughter had been the heart of the kingdom, and he could not imagine the world without her. Scouts returned with fragmentary reports, strange sightings, fleeting glimpses of someone moving through distant forests, whispers of a figure helping travelers in war-torn regions. These reports were never confirmed, but they kept a fragile hope alive in the king's heart. Meanwhile, the princess encountered other survivors, refugees from the battle, scattered groups of civilians and soldiers who had also escaped the enemy's grasp. She helped them when she could, using her skills to guide them to safety. Slowly, word began to spread among these scattered groups of a mysterious warrior moving through the land, protecting the helpless and striking at enemy forces with unmatched skill. Though she remained unseen by her father and the court, the princess was far from forgotten. Stories of her bravery traveled through the galaxy, carried by those she had saved and by those who witnessed her courage. The king would hear these stories eventually, and perhaps they would lead him to hope. For now, she focused on survival, on healing, and on finding a way back home. Even in isolation, she never let fear take over. She reminded herself daily of her duty and her promise to her father. The thought of her kingdom, of the people depending on her, gave her strength. Every day was a struggle, but she faced it with courage and resolve. She knew that one day she would return, and the kingdom would once again feel the light of her presence. As the first part of her journey came to a close, the princess stood on a ridge overlooking the battlefield from a distance. The fires of destruction still burned below, but the night sky stretched wide and full of stars above her. She felt a mixture of sadness, exhaustion, and determination. She was alone, but not defeated. The journey ahead would be long and dangerous, but she had survived this far, and she would survive what was yet to come. In the palace, the king continued to gaze at the stars each night, silently praying for his daughter's safe return. Though his heart ached with worry, he clung to hope. Somewhere out there she was alive. Somewhere out there she was fighting to come home. And one day he promised himself she would return. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The princess moved quietly through planets she had never seen before. Each new world was strange and full of surprises. Some had bright skies with colors she had never imagined. Others had forests so thick she could barely see the sun. She had to be careful on every planet. Not every world was friendly, and some were even more dangerous than the battlefield she had escaped. Despite the dangers, she learned quickly. She studied the plants, the animals, and the people she encountered. She discovered which fruits could be eaten, which waters were safe to drink, and which paths would lead her to safety. Every step was careful, measured, and purposeful. Even though she was far from home, her mind never stopped thinking about the kingdom she had left behind, about the people who depended on her, and about her father, who must be worried sick. Rumors about her survival began to spread, though she did not know it yet. In some towns, merchants whispered about a mysterious warrior moving across the stars. They said she appeared suddenly to protect villages from attacks, helping those who had no one else to turn to. Soldiers in distant regions spoke of her skill in battle, saying no one had ever fought like her. Even those who had never seen her face felt a sense of hope when her name was mentioned. She kept moving from place to place, always staying one step ahead of danger. Sometimes she would sleep in caves, other times she would hide in abandoned buildings. She rarely stayed in one place for long. The world was full of strangers, and while some were kind, others were not. She had learned to trust her instincts above all else. They had kept her alive so far, and she knew they would continue to do so. One day, while traveling through a quiet valley, she came across a group of humans struggling to repair a broken ship. They looked tired, scared, and helpless. Normally, she would have avoided drawing attention to herself, but something about them made her pause. She saw fear in their eyes, the same fear she had once felt when she had been separated from her squad. Without a second thought, she approached carefully, keeping her hands visible so they would not mistake her for a threat. At first, the humans were terrified. They had heard stories of alien warriors, of battles in distant galaxies, and they were not sure whether she was a friend or an enemy. But the princess spoke gently, using simple words and gestures to show she meant no harm. Slowly they began to relax, realizing she was there to help. Over the next few days, she worked with them to repair their ship. She showed them how to fix broken circuits, navigate dangerous terrain, and gather supplies safely. In return, they taught her small things about their world, how to find clean water in hidden streams, which plants were edible, and which places were safest to rest at night. It was a strange partnership, built out of necessity and trust. They came to rely on each other, and slowly they began to understand one another despite the differences between their worlds. During this time, the princess reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the battle she had escaped, about the friends she had lost, and about the kingdom she had left behind. She wondered if her father had given up hope, if he still searched for her, or if he mourned her loss every day. These thoughts were painful, but they also reminded her why she had to survive. She could not let despair take over. She had to keep moving forward no matter how difficult it was. Traveling with the humans brought new challenges. They had their own fears and doubts, and sometimes their mistakes put them in danger. The princess had to stay alert at all times, guiding them, protecting them, and teaching them to stay safe. She realized that leadership was not just about fighting enemies. It was about inspiring others, making difficult decisions, and showing people that there was hope even in the darkest times. One evening, as they camped under the stars, the princess looked up at the sky and thought about her father again. She remembered how he had always told her that the stars were a map of possibility, that each one represented a choice, a future, or a path she could take. She wondered if he was looking at the same sky, hoping to see her somewhere among the stars. The thought gave her strength. She was not alone, not entirely. Somewhere out there, her father still believed in her. The humans began to admire her more each day. They spoke quietly among themselves, amazed at her skill, her courage, and her determination. They had never met anyone like her. She was not just an alien warrior. She was someone who carried hope wherever she went. Even when they were scared, they felt safer with her by their side. Her presence gave them confidence, and that confidence helped them survive challenges they could not have faced alone. As they traveled, the princess and her companions encountered other people in need. Some were refugees fleeing from war. Others were farmers trying to protect their villages, and some were travelers lost in unfamiliar lands. Each encounter reminded her why she could not give up. Every life she touched, every person she helped, was a reason to keep moving forward. It was not just about surviving anymore. It was about making a difference, even in small ways. The months of travel changed her. She was still the same princess, brave and determined, but she had grown wiser. She had learned patience, the importance of listening, and the value of understanding different perspectives. She realized that not all beings were enemies, and not all battles were won with weapons. Some battles were won with compassion, trust, and cleverness. These lessons would stay with her forever. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, the alien king continued to search tirelessly. He had not received any clear news of his daughter's fate, but he could not give up hope. His advisors had begun to speak in hushed tones, warning him of despair, but he ignored them. He had raised a daughter who could survive anything, and he believed in her with every fiber of his being. Reports of strange sightings continued to trickle in. Traders and explorers spoke of a lone warrior helping humans, protecting villages, and vanishing without a trace. The king listened to each report carefully. Could it be her? Could the princess truly be alive? Each story filled him with cautious hope, a glimmer of light in his otherwise dark days. He ordered more scouts, more searches, more inquiries all across the galaxy. He would not rest until he knew the truth. On one of the planets, the princess encountered a small town that had been attacked recently. The villagers were terrified, hiding in their homes and avoiding the open streets. She saw the fear in their eyes and knew she could not leave them to suffer. She worked quickly, setting traps to protect them from further attacks and teaching them how to defend themselves. Slowly, the villagers began to trust her. They listened to her instructions, followed her guidance, and felt safer with her presence. The princess and the humans she traveled with continued their journey. Each day brought new challenges, but also new lessons. She learned to navigate unfamiliar terrains, to understand different cultures, and to see the world in ways she had never imagined. She became a bridge between worlds, showing that trust and cooperation could exist even in the most unlikely places. At night, she often thought about the future. She dreamed of returning to her kingdom, of seeing her father's face again, and of sharing everything she had learned. She wondered how he would react to the humans she had come to trust and care for. She knew it would not be easy, that some in the kingdom might be suspicious or afraid. But she also knew that her experiences had made her stronger, wiser, and more capable of facing whatever lay ahead. The journey was far from over. The princess knew that danger was always nearby, and that the path home would not be simple. But she also knew that she was not alone. She had allies, friends, and the strength within herself to continue. Every step she took, every decision she made, brought her closer to the day when she would return to her father and her kingdom. And so the princess moved forward, through strange worlds, across alien landscapes, and among people she had never met before. She faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, but she never gave up. She survived, learned, and grew stronger with each passing day. Though she had been lost, she was far from defeated. The galaxy was vast, and her journey had only just begun. The princess had been traveling alone for many months when she first saw him, a human trapped in a dangerous situation on a strange, unfamiliar planet. He was caught in the middle of a rock slide, rocks tumbling around him as he struggled to escape. She acted instinctively, her training kicking in. With precise, careful movements, she jumped into the chaos, clearing the debris and pulling him to safety. At first, the human was terrified. He had heard stories of alien warriors, of battles in distant galaxies, and he did not know whether she was friend or foe. Her armor gleamed under the strange sun, and her appearance was unlike anything he had ever seen. Fear made him stumble back, but she spoke gently, her voice calm and reassuring. She did not demand obedience, she did not threaten him. She only showed that she wanted to help. Slowly, he realized she was not a danger. Once he was safe, they sat together in the shade of a large rock, catching their breath. The human looked at her with a mixture of awe and confusion. She studied him as well, noticing his injuries, his exhaustion, and the fear in his eyes. They did not speak the same language perfectly, but through gestures, expressions, and simple words, they began to understand each other. Trust was fragile, but it was forming, step by step. Over the next few days, the princess and the human began traveling together. She helped him find food, showed him how to avoid danger, and guided him through strange terrain. In return, he shared his knowledge of the worlds they were passing through. He pointed out edible plants, warned her of hidden dangers, and offered ideas for navigating the alien landscapes. They became a team, relying on each other's strengths. The princess began to notice the human's courage. Even though he was frightened, he did not give up. He faced challenges with determination and learned quickly from her instructions. She admired his persistence and resilience. For her, this partnership was more than practical, it was comforting. She had been alone for so long, and having someone to share the burden, even a little, made the journey feel less lonely. As they moved from planet to planet, they faced many dangers together. On one world, they were chased by a pack of large, predatory creatures. The princess led the human to safety, using clever tricks to outsmart the creatures. On another, they had to navigate a field of quicksand, working together to keep each other from sinking. Every challenge strengthened their bond, building trust, respect, and a deep understanding of each other's abilities. During quiet moments, the princess reflected on her journey so far. She thought about the battle she had escaped, the friends she had lost, and the kingdom she longed to return to. She thought about her father and wondered how he was coping with her absence. She realized that even in the darkest times, hope was a powerful force. It kept her moving forward, kept her alive, and now it was helping her guide someone else through danger as well. The human began to open up, sharing stories about his life and his world. He had not expected to survive in the vast, dangerous galaxy alone, and meeting the princess had changed everything. He admired her bravery, her intelligence, and her compassion. Though he had once feared her, he now trusted her completely. Their bond grew stronger with each day, built on shared experiences, survival, and mutual respect. One evening they camped near a small lake under the light of 2 moons. The human watched her silently as she cleaned her weapons and tended to her armor. Finally he spoke, asking questions about her life, her kingdom, and the battle that had separated her from her father. She answered as best as she could, using gestures, drawings, and simple words. She did not share everything. Some memories were too painful, but she gave enough to help him understand who she was and why she had fought so hard to survive. The human listened intently, and when she finished, he nodded, clearly impressed and moved by her story. He realized that she had carried a heavy burden for a long time, and that surviving alone required not just skill, but incredible strength of character. He felt honored to travel with her, to witness her courage firsthand, and to be a part of her journey in some small way. Their journey was not easy. They faced hostile environments, aggressive creatures, and other travelers who were not always friendly. Some tried to steal from them, others tried to capture them, but through every challenge they relied on each other. The princess taught the human how to defend himself, how to anticipate danger, and how to stay calm under pressure. In turn, the human offered fresh ideas and new perspectives, surprising her with clever solutions she had not considered. As they moved closer to the princess's home world, the stakes grew higher. She knew that returning to her kingdom would not be simple. Many would doubt her survival. Many would question the human who traveled with her. She worried about the reaction of the palace guards, the council, and even her father. But she also knew that she could not turn back now. The journey had brought her new insights, and the human had become more than a companion. He was a friend, an ally, and a symbol of the possibility that different worlds could work together. On one particularly harsh planet, they were caught in a violent storm. Lightning flashed across the sky, and the wind threatened to sweep them away. They took shelter in a narrow cave, huddling close for warmth and safety. The human admitted that he had been afraid, but he also said he trusted her completely. Hearing those words, the princess felt a warmth she had not felt in months. Even in the most dangerous circumstances, she was not alone. She had someone who believed in her, someone she could rely on. The months of travel allowed them to learn from each other in ways neither had anticipated. The princess shared her knowledge of combat, strategy, and survival. The human shared insights into diplomacy, creative thinking, and problem-solving from his world. Each learned to see situations through the other's eyes, to appreciate differences, and to use their combined strengths to face challenges. Their relationship was not romantic, but it was deeply human, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Through it all, the princess never forgot her goal. She had survived a battle that many believed would take her life. She had traveled across strange worlds, avoided danger, and helped others along the way. But her ultimate mission remained the same: to return home to her father, to the kingdom that needed her, and to reclaim her place in the world she had fought so hard to protect. The human she traveled with had become an essential part of that journey, a bridge between her past and the uncertain future she faced. As they crossed the final stretch of an asteroid-filled sector near her home galaxy, they encountered other travelers who recognized the princess from the stories circulating across the planets. Some offered help, providing supplies and guidance. Others shared information about recent events in her kingdom, giving her a sense of how time had passed and how the world had changed while she was gone. These encounters reminded her that even though she had been lost, her impact had not been forgotten. People remembered her courage, her strength, and her leadership. One evening, as they rested on a quiet hill overlooking a valley filled with strange, glowing plants, the human asked her a question. "When you return," he said slowly, "what will happen to me? Will your father accept me? Will the others trust me?" The princess thought for a long moment. She had considered these questions herself, worried about the reactions they would face upon arrival, but she realized that the bond they had formed, the experiences they had shared, had prepared them for anything. "We will face it together," she replied. "I will not leave you behind. You have proven yourself, and my father will see that. The human nodded, a mixture of relief and determination on his face. They spent the night planning their approach, considering the safest paths and the possible reactions they might encounter. The princess felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Returning home was no longer a distant dream. It was within reach. But she knew that the final challenge would be the hardest of all. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. The princess realized that trust was more valuable than any weapon, courage more powerful than fear. She had survived countless dangers alone, but traveling with the human had taught her the importance of connection, teamwork, and empathy. These lessons would shape her as a leader, a warrior, and a daughter returning to her father. As they moved closer to the boundary of her kingdom, the princess paused to look back at the stars. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also been transformative. She had faced loss, fear, and uncertainty, but she had survived. She had found an unlikely ally, someone who understood her struggles and shared her hopes. And now, as the familiar colors of her homeworld appeared on the horizon, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The human stood beside her, ready for whatever lay ahead. Together, they had survived impossible odds, and together they would face the challenges waiting for them at home. The princess's journey was far from over, but she knew one thing with certainty: she was not. The princess and the human had traveled through countless worlds, faced countless dangers, and now they were closer than ever to her home. The familiar planets of her galaxy sparkled in the distance, and the landscapes she had known as a child were slowly coming into view. Yet the closer they got, the more uncertain she felt. Returning home after so long meant facing not only her father, but also the expectations and fears of everyone in the kingdom. Would they accept her? Would they accept the human who had become her companion? As they moved through the border planets, she kept a careful eye on their surroundings. Scouts from her kingdom patrolled some regions, while rogue factions controlled others. They had to move cautiously to avoid drawing attention. The princess had survived battles, storms, and dangerous creatures, but she knew the journey home would be no less challenging. The stakes were higher now. This was not just survival. It was a return to the life she had been torn from, and that made every step more critical. The human noticed her tension and tried to offer comfort. "We've come this far," he said, "and we've survived everything thrown at us. We'll make it the rest of the way." His voice was calm but firm, a reminder that they were stronger together. The princess appreciated his words, though she could not let herself relax entirely. Trusting him did not mean underestimating the challenges ahead. They encountered their first obstacle when a rogue patrol intercepted them near a small mining planet. These were not enemy soldiers from the original battle, but dangerous mercenaries who preyed on travelers. The patrol demanded identification, asking questions about their purpose and origin. The princess remained calm, carefully explaining that they were just passing through, though her words were not fully understood. The human stood by her, ready to act, and together they avoided a confrontation by using clever diversion and quick thinking. This incident reminded the princess that even near home, danger still existed. She could not let her guard down. The galaxy had changed while she was away, and the forces she once knew were no longer the only threats. They had to navigate carefully, making strategic choices and learning quickly from each encounter. It was a delicate balance of caution and boldness, and it required all of her skill and patience. Despite these challenges, the journey also offered moments of quiet beauty. They traveled through fields of glowing plants that stretched as far as the eye could see, crossed rivers that shimmered under multiple suns, and rested in valleys where the air smelled of wildflowers. These moments reminded the princess of the wonders of the universe, of the reasons she had loved exploration and discovery even before the battle. They were fleeting, but they gave her strength, a reminder that there was more to life than danger and loss. As they continued, the princess taught the human more about her home galaxy, its history, its customs, and the values her kingdom held dear. She explained the importance of loyalty, honor, and courage, not as abstract concepts, but as principles that guided every decision she made. The human listened attentively, asking questions and offering his own perspectives. Their bond deepened with every discussion, every shared experience, and every small victory over the obstacles they faced. One night, they camped under the open sky on a quiet, remote planet. The princess looked at the stars, thinking of her father and the palace she had not seen for so long. She wondered how he was coping, whether he still held hope for her return, and how he would react to the human by her side. The uncertainty was heavy, but it was also motivating. She knew that she had to be strong, not only for herself but for the people she cared about. The human, noticing her distant gaze, spoke softly. "Whatever happens when we get there, we've faced everything together. That matters." His words were simple, but they carried weight. The princess felt a warmth of reassurance. He had become more than a companion. He was someone she could trust completely, someone who had proven himself time and again, and someone who shared her commitment to survival, to purpose, and to hope. As they drew closer to the outer planets of her kingdom, they faced new challenges. Patrols were more frequent, and the landscape was scarred from recent battles. The princess had to use every skill she had learned, not only her training as a warrior, but also the lessons she had gained from traveling through strange worlds. She set careful traps, scouted ahead, and chose paths that minimized risk while still moving steadily toward home. One evening, they encountered a group of travelers who were wary at first. These travelers had heard stories of the princess, stories of her bravery and survival, but they had not seen her face. When they recognized her, they were astonished and eager to help. They provided food, water, and information about recent events in the kingdom. They spoke of how the king had never given up hope, how he had sent scouts and messengers across the galaxy in search of his daughter. Hearing this, the princess felt a mix of relief and determination. She was not forgotten, and now she was closer than ever to returning. Traveling with the human also brought unexpected lessons about compassion and patience. On one planet, they found a village suffering from a recent attack. The villagers were wary of strangers, especially ones carrying weapons and armor. The princess approached carefully, showing them that she meant no harm and using her skills to help repair the damage. The human assisted by teaching simple methods for protecting themselves in the future. Slowly, trust grew, and the villagers began to see them as allies rather than outsiders. These moments reminded the princess that leadership was not only about power, it was about care, understanding, and helping others even when it was difficult. As they neared the boundary of her home planet, tension grew. The princess and the human knew that the palace guards and the council might be suspicious. She remembered the strict protocols and the high expectations her father had for all who entered the kingdom. But she also knew that their journey had prepared them for this moment. They had survived together, learned from each other, and proven their loyalty and courage. Whatever awaited them, they would face it as a team. One night, just before reaching the planetary border, they rested in a hidden cave. The princess reflected on the journey. Months had passed since she had escaped the battle, months of travel, danger, and growth. She thought about the lessons she had learned, how to navigate unknown worlds, how to rely on allies, how to survive through courage and intelligence. She realized that she had changed. She was stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the challenges that awaited her home. The human noticed her silence and asked quietly, "Are you ready for what's next?" The princess nodded. She had been preparing for this moment even if she had not fully admitted it to herself. She was ready to face her father, the court, and the kingdom. She was ready to show that survival had not weakened her, but had strengthened her resolve. Together they would enter the palace, face the challenges, and reclaim her place in the world she had fought so hard to protect. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the landscape, they took the final steps toward the planet's surface. The familiar terrain of her kingdom stretched before them, mountains, forests, and rivers she had known since childhood. Yet it felt both familiar and strange, a reminder that time had passed and that she had changed. The kingdom she remembered was not the same, and she would have to navigate new realities while holding on to her purpose and her strength. The princess and the human approached the city gates cautiously. Guards were posted as usual, their eyes sharp and suspicious. She showed herself openly but moved with confidence, aware that her presence alone would draw attention. The human stayed close, standing ready but not in the forefront, allowing the princess to take the lead. Their journey had prepared them for this moment. They knew that careful strategy, patience, and courage would be key. As the gates opened, whispers spread through the crowd. People recognized the princess from stories, from descriptions, and from reports of her bravery across distant worlds. There were gasps of surprise, exclamations of joy, and a mixture of disbelief and awe. The princess held her head high, her posture proud but humble. She had returned not only as a survivor, but as someone who had grown, learned, and endured challenges beyond what anyone could imagine. The palace was still a short distance away, but the atmosphere had already shifted. Word of her approach had spread, and the city buzzed with anticipation. Guards whispered to each other, couriers rushed with news, and citizens gathered along the streets to see her return. The princess felt a mixture of emotions, relief, nervousness, and anticipation. She was finally home, but the hardest part of the journey was not behind her yet. The human, standing beside her, looked at the city with awe. He had traveled countless worlds with her, but he had never seen a place like this where hope and expectation mingled so closely. He understood that their journey was more than survival. It was a return to a home that had waited for her, that had believed in her even when she was gone. And now they would face whatever challenges came next together. As they continued toward the palace, the princess felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever. She had survived impossible odds, navigated strange worlds, and forged a bond with someone who had become essential to her journey. And now, as the familiar towers of her home came into view, the princess and the human finally arrived at the palace gates. The guards stopped in their tracks as soon as they saw her. Whispers ran through the ranks. It was impossible, yet here she was, alive. The princess walked confidently, but her heart beat faster than it had in months. This moment, the confrontation she had feared and hoped for at the same time, had finally come. The human stayed close, watching the guards with caution. He could see the tension in the air and sensed the uncertainty surrounding them. People had heard stories of the princess's survival, but no one had expected to see her return, and certainly not with a human by her side. He felt nervous but trusted the princess completely. He had faced danger with her countless times, and now he would face this final test together. Inside the palace, the alien king waited in the main hall. He had received reports that a figure resembling his daughter had been seen approaching the city, but he had refused to believe them fully. The months of grief had left him wary, and he had prepared himself for every possible outcome. He wanted to believe she was alive, yet a part of him feared this could be another cruel trick, a false hope that would shatter his heart again. The hall was silent as the princess entered. Courtiers, advisors, and palace guards watched her with astonishment. Their gazes followed her as she walked steadily toward her father. Every step carried the weight of her journey, every movement a demonstration of her survival, her strength, and her courage. The human followed respectfully, staying slightly behind, giving her the spotlight while also preparing to speak if needed. The alien king rose from his throne as she approached. His eyes, once filled with sorrow and fear, now widened in disbelief. He took a step forward, unsure whether to embrace her or question her. "Is it truly you?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The princess nodded, her expression calm but filled with emotion. "It is me, father. I have returned." Her voice carried a mixture of relief, strength, and quiet pride. She stood tall, showing that she had endured much and had grown stronger because of it. The king's gaze fell on the human standing beside her. His first instinct was caution, suspicion, even anger. He had lost his daughter and had imagined that anyone accompanying her now could be a threat. Yet, as he observed the human, he saw something unexpected: loyalty, respect, and courage. He remembered the reports of someone saving lives and helping the princess during her travels. Could this human truly be a friend? Could he be trusted? The princess spoke before her father could respond. "Father, I know you do not know him, and I understand your hesitation. But he saved my life. He has traveled with me, helped me, and proven himself trustworthy. I would not have returned without him." Her words were firm yet respectful, a reflection of the wisdom she had gained during her absence. The king studied the human closely. The human did not flinch under his gaze. He stood with honesty in his eyes, showing that his actions had been guided by care, courage, and respect. The king realized that this human was not just a companion. He had become part of the princess's journey, part of her survival, and perhaps part of her family now. Tension filled the hall. Courtiers whispered among themselves, some skeptical, some curious. Advisors exchanged glances, unsure how the king would react. The kingdom had not seen the princess in months, and her sudden return with a human companion challenged every expectation. Yet the air also carried a sense of hope, as if the impossible had truly happened. The king took a deep breath, steadying himself. He spoke carefully, choosing his words with precision. "I have feared losing you forever," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "But you have returned alive, and it seems you have chosen your companion well." His gaze softened slightly as he looked at the human. "Tell me, why should I trust you?" The human stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "Your Majesty, I have no claim to your kingdom, and I seek nothing for myself. I only wish to help her, to ensure her safety and to support her in whatever she chooses to do. I would not have survived the journey without her guidance, and I would not have survived the journey with her without doing my part. I am here because I believe in her, and because I respect the trust she has given me." His words were honest, simple, and direct, carrying a sincerity that even the most skeptical could not deny. The princess watched her father closely as he considered the human's words. She could see the conflict in his mind, the mixture of grief, caution, and curiosity. Months of worry had left him wary, yet he could not ignore the truth in the human's presence. The human had proven himself not only through words but through actions, through survival, and through loyalty. The king remained silent for a long moment, allowing the weight of the situation to settle. Then slowly he nodded. "Very well," he said. "You have shown loyalty and courage. But understand this, you are now part of a kingdom that has faced great hardship. Trust must be earned every day, not assumed. Do you understand?" The human bowed again, fully aware of the responsibility placed upon him. "I understand, Your Majesty," he said simply. "I will do whatever is required to honor that trust." The tension in the hall began to ease. Courtiers and advisors whispered less urgently, and some even approached the princess, offering gestures of welcome and congratulations. The king's demeanor softened as he looked at his daughter, seeing not only the child he had once known but the warrior, the survivor, and the leader she had become. The princess stepped closer to her father, lowering her head slightly in respect. "Father, I have learned much on my journey," she said. "I have faced danger, loss, and uncertainty. I have met people who challenged my assumptions and helped me grow. I return not just as your daughter, but as someone who can help the kingdom in ways I could not have before. And I bring someone who has proven himself as a companion, an ally, and a friend." The king studied her closely, seeing the truth in her words. He realized that the journey had changed her, strengthened her, and prepared her to face the future with wisdom and courage. He also recognized that the human by her side was part of that growth, a living example of loyalty, bravery, and the importance of trust. For a long moment, the hall was silent. Then the king spoke again, his voice firm but gentle. "You have returned, alive, and you have brought proof that trust and loyalty can cross worlds. Welcome home, my daughter." He extended his hand toward the human. "And you who has journeyed with her are welcome here as well. But remember, loyalty and courage must continue, not end with arrival." The princess felt a wave of relief and pride. The hardest part of the journey, returning to her father and proving herself, was complete. She had survived impossible odds, faced uncertainty, and now she stood in the palace, recognized and respected not only as a princess, but as a warrior and a leader. The human beside her had proven himself beyond doubt, and their bond had been acknowledged. The courtiers and advisors began to approach, offering congratulations, sharing news, and preparing for the reintegration of the princess into palace life. Citizens who had gathered outside caught glimpses of her, their faces lighting up with joy and disbelief. Stories of her survival, her bravery, and her journey with a human companion spread quickly, giving hope to a kingdom that had feared losing its beloved princess forever. The princess took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her journey and the promise of the future. She had returned not just to reclaim her place in the kingdom, but to show that courage, loyalty, and compassion could overcome fear, prejudice, and impossible odds. The human stood beside her, a symbol of the strength found in trust, partnership, and shared struggle. As the sun set over the palace, casting long shadows across the marble floors, the princess and her father stood together. The hall was filled with whispers, awe, and admiration, yet the moment felt quiet and personal. The journey had been long, dangerous, and uncertain, but they had reunited. And in that reunion, hope, courage, and the promise of a brighter future filled the air. The princess had returned home, but her journey was not yet over. Life in the palace, once familiar, now felt different. She had changed during her time away, and so had the kingdom. The battle had left scars on the land and in the hearts of the people. Her father, the king, had worked tirelessly to maintain order, but he too had changed, carrying the weight of worry and grief. The princess knew that her presence would bring relief, but it would also bring challenges, questions, expectations, and the need to rebuild what had been lost. The human companion, now recognized by the king, stood beside her as they walked through the palace corridors. People watched in quiet awe, some whispering among themselves, others staring openly. It was unusual for someone from another world to walk through these halls, yet the trust the princess had placed in him gave him a kind of acceptance. Still, the princess knew that not everyone would be easy to convince. Some would be wary of the human, questioning why she had returned with someone unfamiliar to their customs and ways. The princess entered the council chamber, where her advisors and ministers had gathered. Their expressions were a mix of relief, joy, and curiosity. Many had feared that she had been lost forever, while others had doubted the stories of her survival. Now, seeing her alive and well, they struggled to reconcile reality with the tales they had heard. The princess spoke calmly, addressing them not just as rulers, but as people who had endured the same hardships she had faced. During my journey, she began, I have seen many things, faced many dangers, and learned that courage and trust can come from the most unexpected places. I return not only to reclaim my place as a daughter of this kingdom, but to help rebuild what has been broken. The human who stands with me has proven his loyalty and courage. He has been my ally, and I ask you to see his value not as an outsider, but as a friend and partner in the work we must do together. The room fell silent. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of experience, authority, and sincerity. The human nodded respectfully, understanding that this was a moment not just of acknowledgement but of judgment. He had proven himself through action, but now he had to earn the trust of the entire council and the people he had yet to meet. One of the senior advisors stepped forward. Your Highness, the man said carefully, we have heard of your journey, though the details are fragmented. Your survival has inspired hope, yet some among us worry. Can we truly trust this human who has accompanied you? The princess looked directly at the advisor, her voice steady. I have faced every danger with him by my side. He has saved lives, protected those in need, and shown loyalty beyond what I could have asked. Trust is not given lightly, and I do not ask you to trust blindly, but see his actions, see his courage, and judge him by what he has done, not by what you fear. The council members exchanged glances. Some nodded slowly, beginning to understand. Others remained cautious, needing time to reconcile tradition with the extraordinary reality before them. The king, watching silently, finally spoke. We will judge not by fear, but by deeds. If he has helped my daughter, then he has shown his worth. Let us give him a chance to prove himself further. But remember, loyalty must be maintained, not assumed. The princess felt a quiet sense of relief. Her father's acceptance was the first step toward restoring harmony in the palace and kingdom. She turned to the human, offering a small, encouraging smile. He returned it with a nod, understanding the weight of this moment. Together, they would navigate the path ahead. The first days back in the palace were filled with adjustments. The princess reconnected with her father, discussing the state of the kingdom and the challenges they faced. She learned about the damages caused by the battle, the people displaced, and the fragile peace that had been maintained. The human observed and learned as well, gaining insight into the kingdom's structure, its rules, and its people. He worked quietly, helping wherever he could, showing that his presence was a benefit rather than a burden. The princess also spent time meeting with citizens who had heard of her return. They approached cautiously at first, unsure whether to believe the tales of her survival. But as she spoke to them, sharing stories of her journey, her efforts to help others, and her vision for rebuilding, their fear transformed into admiration and trust. The human assisted, not as a leader but as a witness, demonstrating through his actions that the princess's words were true and that their bond was genuine. Together, they began initiatives to repair the damage caused by the war. Villages were rebuilt, food and supplies were distributed, and security measures were strengthened to prevent further attacks. The princess led with confidence, using both her experience as a warrior and the lessons she had learned on her travels. The human provided support, offering strategies and ideas from his perspective, helping bridge understanding between worlds and cultures. Through this work, the princess learned the importance of collaboration. Leadership was not only about commanding, but about listening, understanding, and making decisions that considered the needs of everyone. She realized that survival had taught her patience, empathy, and creativity, qualities that were now just as valuable as strength and skill in battle. The human had been a teacher in these ways as well, showing her perspectives she might never have considered on her own. Word of her return and their combined efforts spread quickly through the kingdom. Citizens who had feared the loss of their princess began to hope again. Traders, travelers, and soldiers spoke of her courage and determination, of the human who had accompanied her, and of the new partnership that symbolized unity and trust. The princess's presence inspired action and confidence, while the human's support reinforced that loyalty and courage could transcend boundaries. Even the palace guards and military officers began to respect the human, observing his careful attention, his willingness to learn, and his commitment to the princess's safety. Slowly they accepted him not as a stranger but as an ally, someone who had proven his worth through both courage and humility. The princess watched this transformation, recognizing that the journey had created not just survival, but understanding between worlds. As weeks passed, the princess and the human continued their work, strengthening relationships, repairing the kingdom, and fostering trust. She met with scholars, strategists, and leaders, learning from them and teaching what she had learned during her travels. The human contributed wherever he could, providing insights, helping with logistics, and building connections. Their partnership became a symbol for the kingdom, showing that trust, cooperation, and loyalty could overcome fear and uncertainty. One evening, as the sun set over the palace, the princess stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The streets were alive with activity, people moving freely and rebuilding their lives. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the battles, the dangers, the lessons, and the companionship she had found. The human stood quietly beside her, respecting the moment, sharing the view and offering silent support. The princess turned to him and smiled. "We have done much, but there is still more to do," she said softly. "This kingdom has survived, and we have survived. Together we can ensure it thrives, not just survives." The human nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had been part of the journey from survival to return, from uncertainty to trust, and now from fear to hope. Their shared experiences had transformed both of them, creating a bond that was strong, resilient, and human in its essence. The alien king watched from the throne room as his daughter and the human continued their work. He felt a sense of pride, relief, and hope. She had returned stronger, wiser, and more capable than ever. The human had proven himself through courage, loyalty, and dedication. Together they represented a new era for the kingdom, one where trust could cross worlds and courage could inspire beyond the battlefield. In the months that followed, the kingdom flourished. The princess led initiatives to strengthen the people, rebuild infrastructure, and ensure peace. The human worked alongside her, not as a leader but as a trusted ally and partner. The citizens, inspired by their story, embraced cooperation, courage, and unity. The lessons learned during her journey, patience, trust, and resilience, were now guiding the entire kingdom. The princess often reflected on her journey, remembering the battles, the dangers, the friends lost and gained, and the challenges overcome. She realized that survival was not just about fighting, it was about learning, understanding, and connecting with others. The human had been a part of that, a companion who had shown her the strength of loyalty, empathy, and collaboration. As the kingdom thrived, the princess knew that her journey had come full circle. She had returned home, reunited with her father, and helped her people heal. The human had found a place among them not as an outsider but as a friend, ally, and symbol of hope. Together they had transformed loss into strength, fear into courage, and uncertainty into trust. The palace, once quiet and tense, now hummed with life and energy. Citizens moved freely, soldiers trained with purpose, and advisors worked together to ensure the kingdom's stability. The princess walked among them, a leader who had survived the impossible and returned not just to reclaim her place, but to guide her people toward a brighter future. The human, walking beside her, shared eye.